What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your weekend review for August 31st, 2020. We're going to get through the stuff that I don't like to do, but it's actually really, really important. So if you do enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you guys are enjoying these week in review updates. Now that we're past that, we have a big show for you this week. So we're going to jump right into the patch notes. We had 3.10.2 move from the PTU to live. It was essentially a copy paste from those PTU builds that we discussed last week. So they were stable enough, and everything from last week made it in to the live build. Ships did stay persistent. That was the main test, was that if you purchased something, that the ship stayed on your account. But more importantly, anything you purchased all the way back in 3.9 made it back into your account in 3.10. This is an amazing, huge step forward for anyone looking for Star Citizen to start acting like a game sooner than later. In the 2018 CitizenCon, Chris Roberts said, ships are your main progression path. So the fact that you're actually able to keep that progression between patches is a very big deal. Moving on, that's really it for patch notes updates. That's the only one we had. Moving on to roadmap updates. Elevator panels were pushed back in the roadmap roundup post. And they were pushed back because UI work took just a little bit longer than initially expected. And then when it got to the level design team to add these elevator panels into the game, they just had more important tasks. Space stations, cargo decks, these are just more important than elevator panels. So it makes total sense. I think a lot of people are memeing about the fact that elevator panels are taking so long. It's not that they're taking so long, they're just getting deprioritized because they're not that important. I guess this is moving back to 3.12 from 3.11. And this is the second time it's been pushed. Now, missile operator mode is moved to early 2021. This doesn't mean that missiles are still going to be the bane of everyone's existence that plays Star Citizen. I feel by reading this post, and I've been told that I'm wrong, so feel free in the comments to tell me I'm wrong again. It means the team realized how horrible they are now, and they want to take time to make those minor changes now to make it less painful. So I'm going to thank them now for moving missile operator mode back. But what people are telling me is that, you know, what this post says is that everything is going to get pushed back to early 2021 to do it all at the same time. Now, I hope that's not true. We will see. Like, cross our fingers for 3.11. Missiles are not a problem because they are a major one right now. Moving on from roadmaps, we have video updates. This is where the meat of the show really is. There is a lot to get through here. So for ISC, they had what they called a space-scaping feature. So they know space is big, and they want to make it more interesting from a visual standpoint because it tends to be boring while traveling. And yeah, this stuff is visually stunning. But again, I've said this for years now, I think. If we just focused on the gameplay, you wouldn't have the problem of the game be boring because there's nothing visually around you. I really hope they don't always have the focus on this stuff and they focus more on gameplay in the future. But for now, this stuff is looking really amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, the next part they showed was the scale of everything.
So right here, this is a sphere the scale of yellow. So it's very close to the scale of a moon here, this child itself. But we can scale up a little bit. Here's the size of Hurston, slightly bigger, not too bad. And here's the size of Crusader. And we have that compared to the parent. The parent is even larger than that. So I think there's a lot of space that we can use around here to add extra little depths, little children, even though that sounds funny to say, little child gas clouds all around the parent here, and it can hold them as a home.
Yeah, the scale on this is insane. So when we get these, I feel like it's going to be a similar moment to when we first saw moons and planets. So I think most of us are sci-fi nerds, and nebulas and gas clouds are a big part of that, right? So now if they can just get like the Starfarer refining these clouds, then we're talking. I mean, that's sort of what I was talking about in the previous part was, you know, if we can get the gameplay applied to these as well, that would be really nice. Then they went into what was the forced reactions featurette, and they started out with Twitch reactions.
One of the forced reactions that we're working on is called Twitch, where the player will be hit by a bullet and their body will react in a certain way depending on how far away they are being shot. And how far they are depends on how strong the impact will be. So when you're being hit by a automatic weapon, you'll really feel that impact. Similarly, if you're being shot by a rifle, the rifles generate a lot more impact, which means you're going to get a much more severe reaction. When you get hit by a shotgun from far away, you'll get peppered by many pellets, and the more pellets you get hit by, the more of an impulse that's generated, meaning your camera's going to shake more. However, if you walk up to the shotgun and get shot point blank, suddenly you get knocked down, and now you have a chance to shoot your enemy.
I really like these, especially the shotgun knockdown. That seems pretty smart, pretty cool, and pretty realistic, and should add to the game instead of take away from it. Like, you know, sometimes they add things that I feel take away from the game. I think this definitely adds to the game. Then they moved on to explosion knockdowns. We're just going to have some video play while we talk about this. This is going to make things like grenades and other explosives, maybe flashbangs, all those kind of things come into the game and be more useful. Right now, last week we discussed how they're making throwing the grenades a little bit easier and make more sense. That's going to make them more useful. But thinking of, I don't know, knocking down a player or stunning them instead of just killing them, or yourself, as you may see in this video if you're a little bit too close, just not dying instantly is going to be really important for a game that has, you know, a death of a spaceman type mechanic. Then they moved on to how the ships will act on the players as well. So there's forced actions for the force of gravity now within ships.
We're going to see your character's going to start leaning depending on the g-forces of the ship. So right now we're flying directly upwards. What I'm going to do now is ask a Andromeda to ram the ship.
Okay, this is going to be really fun, really immersive, and yeah, you're going to want to be strapped down to a seat more often than you think in the near future, so that's pretty cool. Moving on, there was a calling all devs. Now, this was really technical, and I don't do well explaining technical things to people, so the link will always be in the description for anything that we discussed today, but yeah, so we'll more touch on the what state and where they are in terms of timelines with these things in the clips that we'll discuss, but there are technical discussions about a lot of the features that we're going to discuss here, and I did leave some of that in, but I won't touch on it, and I really think you guys should listen to the whole thing yourself if you are interested in these types of things. So starting out with iCache, what is it?
iCache is effectively kind of shorthand for a collection of services that are interfacing with the game servers and backend databases to allow us to both write out and query data efficiently and in a fault-tolerant way. So this is really important because right now, the way the servers are working, they're using an in-memory kind of database for this global data. Ultimately, that's not feasible. We need to build it out so that things can work in a mesh. In order for that to happen, we need to actually write this out into a place that all the servers can look at it and agree on what the state of the world is. So the iCache is our solution to make that access scalable. Mm-hmm. And right now, the iCache infrastructure on the back end is actually largely done, and it's now at the point where game side, we're hooking up our game code in order to correctly write out the data efficiently, query the data efficiently, as well as fix up some of the game code systems that had previously maybe had some assumptions that don't work correctly within the new context. So that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Okay, so its back end is basically done, but how it connects and communicates with the game is not. And that's really important because he starts out with like saying it's done, it sounds like, but you really have to listen to him and says this part is done, but that part isn't. So we really needed to touch on that. And how long has it been in progress?
To be clear, like we have known for a long time that we're going in this direction. So on the game code side, the changes that are happening right now aren't normally transformative or refactors or anything like this. There's smaller sets of changes just to make sure that we have followed all the best practices
Awesome.
all over the place, and that things are persisting correctly, and that the querying mechanisms that we're using use the new API. So there's some small changes as far as like the API that you use to query data. There's some new concepts that we've introduced specifically to help leverage in order that, and specifically to allow us to support things like physicalized inventory and the new kind of cargo changes that we're going to support that are also going to be working with physicalized inventory. So we have been going in this direction, but we need to do some final work on the game code in order to make it operate correctly. But also we need to make the fundamental querying mechanisms and physicalized inventory infrastructure on the game side to support the game systems on top of them.
So it's interesting to see how long they've been preparing for this, as well as other prerequisites of like things like physical inventories, and just how much things are tied together is important to hear. And we've heard this before, but it's very important for someone like me who, if you're watching this video, you're probably not following every little thing they say, to share this with you specifically, because yes, iCache is very important, but it also needs this and that thing, and then you know, everything needs each other right now in terms of the tech that they're working on currently. So how will it affect us as the player? How will we see iCache in Star Citizen?
All the different times in the game where you end up interacting with these databases, which is constantly, it'll be things like when you spawn a ship, whenever you change your loadout, so your helmet or your armor, whenever you change something about your vehicles, whenever you purchase something, whenever you deal with cargo. There's all these places in the game where you're interacting with the persistent state of the game. And in all those places, right now we're struggling both with scaling to support the number of players that we want, especially whenever we have like a big event or new release. We're really pushing on the current infrastructure that we have. But on top of it, it'll make it more fault tolerant, so that whenever inevitably something goes wrong, the game just doesn't fall over. With the current what we call a monolithic P-cache that we have, if that service goes down, that's just it for all persistence queries for the entire, not just server, but all the servers. So this is clearly, not the right place to be. But this new set of services addresses that by not, putting all your eggs in one basket, as it were, and allowing for a multiplicity of handlers to be able to react to any requests.
This is also good to hear. All the pain and suffering that we have right now with a lot of this stuff that he's talking about with iCache could and should be resolved when these things come online. Then they move on and start touching on global persistence. So what is that?
Right, so global persistence is something that is supported now that we have this iCache framework. What it means is that we're going to start writing out data about the state of the world that does not include player account data. Previously, we would only store data that was relevant to a particular player's account, things like their ships, their weapons, their item port attachments. Perhaps you stole something from somebody, we'll store that, but that's where it stops. We want to do more though. The game that we envision is this incredibly high fidelity, high persistent world where your actions matter, you have an impact on the world. Well, the only way to make that work is to actually store out the state of those changes and to store out the state of the world itself. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been calling global persistence.
So iCache allows for this to be possible, and it is when they kind of start remembering things besides what you purchase on the website or in game. So any other actions that you do and how they affect the world, that's what global persistence is remembering that stuff. So why is that so important?
And where we're going is making it more permanent and on top of that recoverable. So that as you get into the game, we're going to be able to expand out using server meshing the number of players within effectively an instance, or what we'll start calling a shard. And as that expands, you'll be playing more and more in effectively the same kind of world line or set of history. And your experience will be that you will see you and your playgroups, your effects on the world become more permanent. And the idea is that for all the players in the game, they end up seeing a version of the game that is effectively permanent for them. It is from the time they start playing the game to the time that they end, everything is there.
For me, this is when the game really starts to become more of an MMO at this point than a tech demo. It's a pillar they highlighted at CitizenCon in 2018, And this is why. Something seemingly so simple in every other MMO game, probably because we didn't see the process that it took to get there, but Star Citizen just doesn't do easy. This is something they've been working on and towards for so long, and we need it so bad. And just, yeah, looking forward to seeing that at some point in the near future. When that is, who knows? Then, speaking of when that is, who knows, server meshing. So where are they right now on this?
Well, right now, we're working on a couple of things. We're working on getting the time synchronization correct, which probably doesn't sound very server meshing related. But we've been aware for a while that there's been lag, rubber banding, and kind of desync issues present in the main game. And obviously, with all these servers connected to each other in a server mesh, that's going to make the problem worse. That's the thinking. So we kind of need to address it a bit now. We can't promise that we're going to completely solve it first go, but we're investigating the situation and trying to make as many improvements as we can. And a lot of the issues seem to come back to time synchronization between the client and the server. And in server meshing, just to remind everyone, servers will be connected to each other. So one server will be acting as a client of another and receiving updates from it. So they could too experience rubber banding and desyncs and so on. And then, yeah, we're also looking at getting two servers talking to each other, which may surprise some people that that's not the first thing that we did. But it kind of was, because obviously the first thing you try when you're trying to build server meshing, you just try and connect two servers together and you see what happens. And we weren't really expecting it to work, and we weren't too surprised when it didn't. But it was quite a useful exercise, and it showed kind of what didn't work and what we would have to change to make it work. So we kind of built those tasks out, and people are working through them right now. And we're getting pretty close to where we can give it another go and have a reasonable shot at the two servers actually being able to communicate.
All right, fixing desync is obviously like super important, especially when the servers that are meshing can have desync between each other. So yeah, this being a priority is huge, makes total sense. And obviously getting two servers to talk to each other is pretty key in server meshing. So the fact that we're hoping for this in months, like as in order to have something like Crusader come online, we think we need server meshing. From everything that they've told me, as how I understand it, is for something like Crusader and Port Olisar and the landing zones there to be a thing in Star Citizen, the current game, server meshing would have to exist. And without that, it doesn't. So if they're planning on it for early next year, that means within months, the servers should be able to communicate with each other and well enough to bring in another planet, essentially. And the fact that what Clive is saying here, it makes that really scary and makes it look like it's going to get pushed again to me, but we'll have to see. A lot of the rest of his talk was a little bit too technical for me personally, so again, link is in the description. But generally, they seem positive about their progress on all of these things. But why wouldn't they, right? They're not trying to shoo us away with these videos. They're trying to keep us here and excited about the game. So we'll see. We'll see how their progress goes. We'll see what happens Q1 2020. And if server meshing or whatever tech involved to make the game world larger and more playable, we'll see what happens. Moving on to other updates this week, we have quite a bit here as well. There were 2 sneak peeks. So one for the Sub Flair, which are pretty cool looking knives from Castac Arms, and a time-sensitive canister mission. This looks really, really neat. Adding more missions to the game that are unique and tying them in, I guess, with what work was done with mining is pretty interesting as well. So seeing how something like mining can affect general missions in the game is interesting. Jump Point is available. Based on the title, I'm pretty sure it's Talon and ship-based, as most of the media still is these days. Ship Showdown. Speaking of their media and things that they use to promote more ships. So this is a mix, what seems, between last year's event and their screenshot contests, which is pretty neat, I guess. It's not something I usually partake in, but a lot of people do. This will decide what's on the Free Fly event when it happens, likely towards the end of 3.11 and the CitizenCon celebration area. Galactapedia update, always, these are very cool. Quite a few articles were done here. Foundation Festival top guides and other rewards were done this week as well. So these were, I think, last month's contests, and these are the results of those. Then we also had the Lost Squad lore post, which, if you guys are into the lore, feel free to check that out. And then lastly, the Asperia Talon QA. Honestly, this was all very basic stuff. The Asperia Talon is essentially going to be more agile than the Arrow, but less agile than the Gladius. More stealthy than the Hornet Ghost, but less stealthy than a Saber. So that's essentially the QA with a bunch of other stuff mixed in. Again, link will be in the description if you guys want to check that out. All right, that will do it with today's video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know there was a lot of long clips in there to, take in, but yeah, I really do enjoy doing these videos, guys. So make sure you hit the like button to support these videos and hit subscribe, comment below, and let me know what you thought on any of these subjects. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching.